Hey, good day, everybody. I have with me Sam Trahan back in the studio, back being featured again. I had you on a video before, but this is your first time on the podcast. So welcome.
Mm,
How are you today, Sam?
good man. Good man. It's a little rainy here in Columbus, Ohio, but it's a good day. When it rains,
Yeah, let's go. Sam's the Rainmaker. That's one of his many names. He also
yeah,
is a former. Were you an Olympic level athlete officially?
I guess. And swimming, I went to Olympic trials in 2012 and I was a handful of spots off from actually making the team.
Yes. Didn't you swim against Michael Phelps too?
A couple
Wow.
times.
Well, that is you're way better at swimming than I am. But so Sam also is a pro with that. Plus you got like the octopus thing behind you. You got like the whole water thing going. Man, that's like I think that will be symbolic. I like seeing what themes people have in their life and how you like use that in what you do because it's cool. Like water. I mean, water is cool. Without water, we'd die, and water
Mm,
can kill, but it can also be enjoyed. So
yeah.
you have to give me
And
swimming
it's
lessons.
like the most flexible thing, right?
Yeah, seriously. Seriously. I've heard this kind of a high level concept, but hey, that's what we get into here is that water is the purest form of sound. Take a note on that one. You maybe people will understand that one in like 3 years. All right. So without further ado, Sam has been crushing it lately. So I want to showcase that. We won't get into some specific details with it, but in terms of business growth, rapidly growing, rapidly expanding, also locally in Columbus area. You got the clubhouses going as well. You finally got a taste of the events too recently. You went to the event in San Diego. What was what was that like, Sam? You got to meet a bunch of other purpose-driven people on a whole nother level.
Yeah, so I definitely realized that I probably had some fears around going to events in general, because this was actually the third event that you invited me to, and the first two I told you I was coming to. I found some way to get out of it, and some were practical, some maybe not practical, I don't know, but it was really nice to be supported to actually go to this one, like in the best way. But yeah, going to the event, it was there was a lot of obstacles that I had to face to get there, and just with family, all kinds of different things. Losing my suit on the bus to get down there, all kinds um but it was
No,
good obstacles to overcome, and the obstacles are always there to like show you where you're just not uh doing the right things, so to speak. So it was great. But yeah, the event was amazing. You hear all these things about like this is community. This is really what community is. And there's a big difference between like what people consider community and like what this was. Because this was much more like it was the feeling of like a family. And I know that sounds like cheesy or like cliche or whatever. Um, but it's like in the most practical sense, it's like with the family, like with your family, you can just say whatever you want, right? And I think that's what people want within a community. So it was like kind of one of those things where it's like I wasn't afraid to say what I was scared of. I wasn't afraid to tell somebody they're full of shit. It was like all of those things because of the atmosphere there. It was really easy to kind of open up. So yeah, some really cool conversations and really, really cool things to take away from it, that I just, started implementing. And I realized that that was a catalyst to a lot of the last, how long has it been now?
almost 2 months.
June, 2 months. Oh, that is crazy. It seems like way longer than that.
Yeah, yeah. It's like a
That is
jetpack.
crazy.
It's like a jetpack on your life.
Right.
uh yeah,
That's a
that
breakthrough
was
right there.
yeah, that was so cool to see that because like you've come into the different communities like the self-perfected community and all that, and you already had a certain level of like success and the level you were playing at. I mean, you're in the world of venture capital, which is like a very niche thing in terms of the broad population. So then you came in and you had already done a lot of the self-development stuff too and all that. And but then to see how you then plug into this community and everything, it's like it's I that's one of my favorite things about it is it's a big ecosystem of people from all different walks of life, all sorts of backgrounds, but everybody's united in the same thing of, hey, we got big purpose. So Sam, what is your understanding of purpose? And hit too on the fact that you got, your family and everything. Like you got a big vision. Let's hear it.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. What do I think of purpose?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think I started swimming when I was 7 years old, and my purpose from that point was to get to the Olympics from when I was like very young. I remember talking to my parents about it. And so the purpose of that, what was behind that was so I could get to the Olympics and I could help other people, show them that they could do whatever they want from whatever area or background that they came from. Because I came from like pretty simple beginnings, I guess you could say, middle class family, right? My dad was a steel worker, my mom was like a secretary. So that was like the idea of purpose, is like get to the Olympics and that will be your purpose, right? That's your purpose of being here. Um, and then when I got, all the way to as far as I could get in that realm, then I got into the entrepreneur path. And I remember writing on a huge poster board, change the world, because then I took on that purpose, right? But I had no idea what the hell that even meant, change the world. Like, I tried all kinds of different things to try to fulfill that purpose, but I had no definition of what that even meant. I just saw there was problems in the world. And so generically, I was like, okay, cool. I want to solve these problems or do something that's going to solve these problems. And so that became the purpose. And so the medium to get to that purpose was changing all the time, like 7 different businesses. I got into the fund world. I started to realize that money was behind a lot of this change, and you had to get plugged into the money system in order to actually change things. But I didn't know how, so I was just like, okay, with my limited amount of experience in this area, I'll just connect pieces together. So I would take a guy that had a lot of money, and I would take a thing that needed money, and I would connect them, and I would make a little bit in between, right? And so I did that for a while, and it was really cool because I got to see really big projects happening and people with a lot of money. So I was really connected to like how the money was flowing and what it was flowing into and why they chose those things to flow their money into it and all those things.
And just real quick on that, what did you notice with like what were some trends in that you noticed, especially more recently, of like what types of things were people jumping into and why? Was it just this is going to grow with certain type of return, or was there any other factors to it?
Yeah, so a lot of the guys that would invest into things, it was their level of understanding, or you could say their vocabulary. So for example, if I was talking to a guy that made a lot of money in real estate, he would typically not go into startups because he doesn't know anything about startups. He would go into real estate because he knows very quickly this is, the story of the consultant who can walk in within 10 minutes, draw an X on where your problem is, right?
Mhm.
And you pay him for not that 10 seconds, you pay him for the 10 years of experience it took him to get to that point. Same type of thing, right? Like they could very quickly figure out if a deal was good. So a lot of the things that I started to notice people getting into were like these smart cities. I did a couple projects with like smart cities. And then I noticed it started to shift. This was at the tail end of when I kind of removed myself from it, but it was shifting into ESG was a really big one. A lot of projects around ESG because there was so much money coming from special interest groups and stuff like that. There's a ton of money in ESG stuff. One example was there's a plastic a company, and what they would do is they would take plastic, they would melt it down to oil, which I didn't even know this, but apparently to make plastic, you need oil.
Mhm.
So they would melt it back down to oil, these plastics, and then they would sell that oil off to the plastic maker, right? And what ended up happening is these companies over here that were getting the plastic from the plastic maker, like Coca-Cola, for example, Coca-Cola would now be incentivized to buy from these companies instead of buying straight from the ground, the oil straight from the ground.
Mhm.
And so you can draw all these lines and stuff. But it's all around like this ESG movement. They're getting a lot of influence around that. So that was a big one. And then another interesting one was AI. AI was like, I saw a lot of people trending towards all this stuff within AI, that type of technology. I didn't have a lot of experience there because I never got a ton into it, but I noticed that at the end, there was just a lot of money being generated towards AI.
Wow, that's fascinating. And then you got out, you saw the light. Well,
Yeah.
metaphorically.
The darkness. I think you could almost say the
Yeah,
darkness.
the darkness of it. Because the ESG stuff, it sounds so good, but it has so many strings attached to it, which we don't have to get into that here. But yeah, so then how did your purpose then evolve after that round of thinking, oh, just make billions of dollars and change the world? What flipped then after that?
Um, so then I came across, I think somebody told me this story. I don't even know who, or it was somebody within the community, but I remember hearing the story about, okay, so if a bum is on the side of the street and you give him money, right? You give him shelter, and you give him everything that he needs on the outside. What will end up like follow him for 5 years? What will end up happening, right? And 99.9% of the time, he's going to end up in the same spot unless you changed his level of thinking, right? And that's when it dawned on me, even self-interestly, that even if you are an investor and you want to make a ton of money, it's not about following what everybody else is doing. If you really want to make a lot of money, it's about getting in front of the things before they happen. Get in front of Starbucks before it blows up, getting in front of Amazon before it blows up, whatever it is, right? It's about getting at that, having the vision to be able to see that. And when I heard that story, it also made me realize, like, okay, cool. So how many people right now have no ability to actually change their thinking, or have no idea how, right? And it's like, it's this big whole thing of like, nobody understands the mind, nobody understands the brain, how it works, all of that kind of stuff. And nobody can make people effective in a relatively short amount of time. You look at the traditional school set, the traditional schools, and I mean, it's very obvious to see how they're trending everybody in the wrong direction. So it's like, okay, from a supply and demand standpoint, and I might begin to
No, that's
meta
good.
on this.
That's good. I like it.
Yeah, so from a supply and demand standpoint, if you look at, okay, the UN predicted that 800 million jobs are going to be replaced by AI in the next 7 years. Doesn't mean that all jobs are going to be gone and they're just going to be robots. It means that there will still be jobs for people, sure. But 800 million jobs, that's twice the population of the US. That is a shit ton of things that are going to change. And those jobs are not going to require stupid people. They're going to require more educated people. Okay, cool. So we need more educated people. And 7 years is a short amount of time. So we need it fast. Okay, so then you shift and you're like, where are we going to find this supply of people, smart people? Right. And you look at the education system, like, no, right? That's like not even close, right? 2 out of 3 kids can't read at grade level. 130 million Americans can't read the back of a pill bottle. It's not working. So you can see from an investing standpoint, if we can find a solution that in a short amount of time, relatively, can effectively get people pretty smart, that's a huge investment opportunity, right? And so when I started putting those type of pieces together, it really made sense from, like a business standpoint, but then from the purpose standpoint of like what's behind all of that. The whole money system is completely corrupt, right? And I got to see it firsthand. Like I had many conversations with billionaires. I had many conversations with high level millionaires, all of that. And it's like, what do they have going well for them? Sure, they're making money, but then like every other part of their life is falling apart, right? They have these pretend relationships with people. It's like, it's pathetic, right? And so it's like, it can't just be finding a new solution that's going to make us a bunch of money and then becoming the people that have all the money, because then we just become them. So it's like, okay, what's behind it, right? Like, and that's when you guys showed me those 13 principles, it really made a lot of sense, because it was like, okay, cool. What if we could be the 1%, not only in money, because that's all people think within when they think 1%, but what if you could be the 1% with your relationships? What if you could be the 1% within not only your relationships with your family, but also with your community, with your business partners, things like that. And that's when the whole purpose was like, okay, cool. Because if those people that had those principles and they were the 1% in money, like, and they're the ones that can start to direct this whole thing, whoa, that's a completely different outlook of what the world will start to become.
Yeah. Have you ever seen, those giant barges that go through the canals, right? And it's like, they're huge, so huge. And then if they ever have to get them turned around, it's actually a bunch of little tugboats come in and then we'll, grapple onto it and start pulling it. So it's like right now, our world system, the economy, society, culture, politics, everybody sees this on some level. Some people are good at suppressing it, but people are really waking up to this. That is broken. And so it's like that barge has got to get corrected. But yeah, how do you then get the best tugboats all working together too? Because if we have a bunch of different tugboats and whatever, and then they're all pulling in different directions, the barge just keeps going the same way or it's just stalled. So it's like, yeah, we're on a barge about to go off a waterfall. And this group that we're in is like, okay, we got tugboats that we know work. Now it's just expanding it and pulling it in the right direction.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
The piece there, right, is the tugboats, all the tugboats, they have to do things in alignment. And to do that, they have to have a good, clear walkie-talkie and then be able to communicate exactly what they want to communicate to each other.
Clear signal. Exactly. And like, it's not like you need now 10 million tugboats, for example. There's 10, 100 million, whatever, on the ship, but it's like, you just need a certain amount. And it's also like, it's hard some days and other days amazing, but it's like, you don't do it because it's easy or hard. You do it because that's what you're here to do, and you cultivate that over time. So I'm curious then, what have you noticed with your family as well? Whatever you want to share on here. Like, you were telling me some ridiculous story about your older son. You got door knocked on, and then he presumed to start like influencing the door knocker. But whatever stories you want to share, anything, like, I think this really grounds it for people to see like what we're doing is really next level.
Yeah, so I'll try to paint the story here. But it's really really cool if you can grasp what I'm trying to get across. So yeah, we moved into a new neighborhood, new home here. It's a beautiful home, a really cool area, nice neighbors. And because it's a new neighborhood, there's a lot of door knockers that will come through. Pest control, solar. This guy was pest control. So anyway, I was sitting there with both of my sons, and I hear a pound on the door. I go to the door, answer it, and the guy's pitching me on pest control, right? And I'm like, yeah, I think that when they spray for pest control, it actually brings more pests to the house, and I think that's their business model, and I was just messing with them. And so eventually, I got to the point of like, I was asking him just about a sales process. I was asking him like, why do you do this? A lot of questions. And then we got into like what I was doing in education. And I told him the story about one of the kids that uses our tool, and he's reading like high school level books, in under 24 hours, like just crazy, crazy story. And at that time, Koa, my oldest son, runs up to the door and he looks up at the guy, and the guy looks at looks at him, then looks at me and says, "Hey, can he read?" Right? And Koa didn't say anything. The guy also didn't talk to Koa. He said it to me. And I was like, yeah, I mean, we've been doing some stuff here and there. And yeah, mind you, at this time, Koa is 2. So he asked me that, and Koa disappears. And I didn't think anything of it because I was just like, okay, whatever. He's going to go back and play or do whatever he's doing. I keep talking to the guy. 5 minutes later, Koa comes back, right? And he has this book. And the book, it's downstairs somewhere. It says a word of the day on it. And so he brings the book to the door, doesn't say anything to me. He looks at the guy, right? And he opens the book, right? And he's going through the book and he's showing him the words that we've done, right? And so he's like, buy, to, be, right? Like going through all these words with him. And the guy's like, holy shit, he gets it. Like he gets it, like he understands. But the cool part is like, cool, yeah, you can kind of read, and he's 2, sweet. The really cool part to understand here though is Koa was able to, at 2 years old, come up, see this guy, and see that, okay, this guy is asking my dad, can I read? Okay, cool. I'm going to go show him that I can read. And the level of focus and the ability to discern that's what's so amazing. Because then he could go off, focus for 5 minutes to find the book, wherever it was, come back, and then open up the book and show and hold his attention this whole time on what it was, and show the guy this, that he could do it, right? And so that part was really, really cool. The discernment and the focus, especially of a 2-year-old, when we're spending 30 minutes maybe on education a day, like it's really phenomenal to try to like just picture what that might turn into.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you think it will, because I mean, you've seen him developing now every day. Obviously, you're there with him, right? And your other son, Teo. What do you see? And with all the other kids too in the community. I mean, you got Max, Aria, Luna, all of these kids, Bruce and Kristen's kids. Like, how are you seeing this unfold? Then combined with your mindset of like the supply and demand and where the world's headed, like how do you make sense of all that and where it's headed?
Yeah, so I think over time, these kids will become, like, it's undeniable now if you sit with them. Like if you sit with them and you're with them in real time, it's undeniable that these kids are effective. And then when you have them in a group and you can see, okay, that kid's parents are from humble beginnings. That kid's parents are from humble beginnings. That person has high vocabulary, they're a little bit smarter. This kid over here is like, whoa, their parents were poor, right? And you see them all together, and then you're like, whoa, they're all really, really, really effective. It's undeniable when you're with them. But I think over time, it's going to be so undeniable because of what they will be putting into the actual system itself, right? That it's like almost, I think it'll be almost hard. It's hard for me to even comprehend right now, but I think like, it takes me 8 months to really get a business off the ground, right? And I think that because of the way that these kids are being programmed, not just in business, but whatever they decide to do, that learning curve is going to be exponentially shorter, right? So they're just going to be able to go into things and just self-esteem of learning. It's the biggest thing is their self-esteem and their confidence within the ability to learn something is so high that it doesn't matter what the problem is. They're going to be able to problem solve.
Right. And then that coupled with vocabulary so that they can actually pick up any book and actually read it. Because a lot of times, we'll sit with parents. I know we meet with parents pretty much every day, right? And you'll
Mhm.
hear some parents and they'll be like, oh, yeah, my kid was reading at 3. My kid could read this book at, whatever, as a
Mhm.
way to attempt to, showcase how great of a parent they are, how great their kids are. And that's cool. Like, I'm not downing them at all. It's just then when you actually understand there's a difference between phonics based reading and
Mhm.
then it's called whole language theory. And the phonics means you can pick up a book and you can sound it out. Like, for example, right? We could pick up a book on, I don't know, quantum computers. And we could read the book and you could even say it with inflection and make it sound good. And some of the words. So you're like, oh, yeah, it's this. And people listening who don't know would be like, oh, my God, wow, he can read.
Mhm.
But if you actually had to sit down and say, wait, now what does this practically mean? And can I use this to now build something real? That's where it gets a little bit dicey. Whereas the whole model that we have, and it's backed up by all the research, if people actually want to go look through it, look at Language at the Speed of Sight, 30 Million Words, Beginning to Read by Marilyn Yeager Adams. There's a whole plethora of the research basically saying the real way to read is where it's automatic that you recognize the word, the vocabulary. So it's
Mhm.
like you see the word and you instantly know it and you have a definition. Because every time someone's reading and they come across a word that they don't know, their brain, when they actually hook it up on an EEG, their brain shuts down for a slight second and then it comes back online when then they know all the words. So
Mhm.
the thing is, right, you're reading some book now on how to, I don't know, prepare yourself for when 800 million jobs are gone and you're trying to reskill yourself. And now all of a sudden, though, there's like 3 words in the paragraph you didn't know. You miss out on actually comprehending it and using it. It's like,
Yeah.
it's like you ever use those Christmas lights and where, like, if one of them is gone, the whole string doesn't turn on.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's vocabulary. And
Yeah.
people
That's a
don't
great
know which
analogy.
ones that they're missing. And so our whole approach is no, you can actually go through, systematically test which light is missing, put it in. Then when you have it, you get something totally new, which is the actual
Mhm.
string is lit up. But I'm
Right.
just sharing all that for context because we will come across parents who might think that they've seen something like this, where they're like, oh, yeah, my kid can read. And sure, there are a few kids out there who are like those supernatural genius kids. But
Mhm.
like you were pointing out, we have kids from all walks of life. Kids who have had
Mhm.
dyslexia, kids with ADD, ADHD, they're even put on meds and now they're off the meds. And it's like they can actually read and that self-esteem of knowing that they can pick up any book. And then also, if they don't know something, they can just rapidly learn it.
Mhm.
Now imagine when there's not just, all the kids we have now, but let's say 5,000 of these kids. Like they're going to create new
Yeah.
economies.
Yeah. For sure. Yeah, for sure. And it's what's crazy too is like it's not just reading, it's like your reading is directly related to your processing speed. So in real life, right, when they're seeing problems, they're not getting their Christmas lights aren't shutting off in a conversation on, something that they need to hear. They can just they're just rapid fire, right? Yeah, it's going to be pretty exciting.
Yeah, yeah. It's really fun to see because it's like a lot of people talk about, oh yeah, if I was there in the early days of Amazon or if I was there in the early days of Microsoft, yeah, I would have been by Jeff Bezos' side. It's like probably not. You'd have probably been the person who's reading the tabloid in the newspaper that's like, oh my God, Jeff Bezos at it again, trying to scam everyone into his, online everything store. And nowadays everyone like has Amazon stock and they like happily pay their Prime membership.
Yeah.
But
Dude,
that's, yeah.
I would
Uh-huh.
encourage anybody listening if they because I don't think most people, 99.9% of people could even handle going back and being with him at the beginning of Amazon, right? Or any type of movement like that. But if there's like a movement like that and you can discern enough, right, to see that like it's going, instead of waiting, right? Like put yourself into that scenario because it's like, why the hell are we here, right? I always think about this. Why are we here? And at the root level, don't you really want to know like how much you're actually capable of? Like how much you can actually do, like you specifically, right? And I think going to something like that, like, whether it's Amazon, at the beginning of Amazon blowing up that big, starting something with such a big purpose, the biggest purpose, and trying to start at the beginning of that, you're going to find out what you're actually capable of just by design and staying in it and constantly working through all the issues. So it's like that's the ultimate way to figure out why you're here.
Yeah, yeah. And just to be like explicitly clear for everybody, it's like now it doesn't mean now go try and invent a new Amazon. It's like let's look at what is the biggest problem that the world is facing. Education. The kids can't read, the adults can't read that well.
Yeah.
Like I know some people will fight that, so I'll give you a little bit of credit. Yeah, you can read some. But in reality, the people who can really read are the billionaires, the people who run countries, like the people who can read like thousands of words a minute.
Yeah.
That's real reading. That's like if I were to swim against Sam and we go in the pool, I'm like, Sam, I could swim. You'd be like, sure, of course you could swim. And then you swim with me, and I'm like, I don't even know what that was. Like that's real swimming. That's the same thing with reading and processing information. And
Yeah.
so what we're saying is like the problem that Sam and I have chosen to take on is solving education at the root. And that's something you can reach out to either of us one-on-one about, is like, how do we do this? Like, how does Sam and his wife homeschool their kids? And his son is now smarter than 99% of the other 2-year-olds. And that as we crack that code of really getting the grassroots of these kids getting educated, that will open up thousands of new opportunities.
Yeah.
But it's like the barge. Remember we were talking about the barge and then the tugboats. It's like if that barge goes down, we're in a whole different thing. But if get the barge good, get the tugboats, get it turned around, and then we can focus on so many new things. But there's like a sequence to it. Right?
Yeah.
So yeah. So what else? What do you think? What do you think people need to see or hear? Or are there any questions that you found asking yourself? Anything like that you can kind of plant as a seed for the listeners to like take with them as they go throughout their day and in their life?
Yeah. Something I've been focusing on recently is like identifying the challenges that I have in my life and the personal problems that I have, right? Even like the small ones, right? Like, maybe I'm complaining about how far it is to go to a meeting or something like that. Simple stuff, right? But I'm trying to get that all down on paper. Okay. And then at the same time, starting to open myself up to really looking at the problems in the world as a whole, right? So I met a girl the other day, and she had been stripping since she was 18 years old. And she's like, yeah, I'm up here because I'm a veteran and doing this. She has 3 kids, right? And she's like, I gave the first 2 up for adoption. And, the third one, we're doing our best to get them through. And she told me her whole like life story, right? And I was just sitting there with her and like listening because it was kind of interesting. And a lot of people are like opposed to doing that because it kind of bursts their bubble, and then they realize that there's bigger problems outside of themselves. And so I've really taken it on of like, I'm not seeking out those things necessarily, but looking at what are the bigger problems that are going on, because it really puts in context your how small your problems really are and how big or small your bubble may be. And it really starts to paint the picture of like, okay, if these are really this is what is happening, this is closing in more and more and more and more on my bubble. You start to realize like, even self-interestedly, you have to do something. Like you got to start to do something. It's no longer like you can just abdicate your responsibility of not doing anything. You have to do that, but you're not going to see that unless you start to get perspective. So that's something I would encourage people to do, is just look at your problems and then kind of face them versus the other. Don't get lost in that kind of stuff, but it helps paint the picture of like, okay, cool. My problems are not that big of a deal, and I am privileged. So what am I going to do about being in that privileged situation? How can I take advantage to help not just myself, but everybody else around me in that situation.
That's amazing, man. Yeah. Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree. It's like, especially as you get more success, then it's even more responsibility. So you can go even further and impact even more people. And as we all like unite in that and work on that and keep growing that, like the world can be in a really, really amazing place. So we just get to
Right.
expand that. So cool. Well, thanks, Sam. I will definitely tag your Instagram, your Facebook in here so people can reach out to you and chat with you further. Watch Sam's kids in a year from now, 2 years from now, like, man, y'all are gonna like be setting records. So let this be a little mark in history to see that like we're normal people doing this, but getting extraordinary change. So yeah. Any closing remarks, Sam?
No, man. That was cool. That was cool. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate, just giving a little opportunity to express here, and yeah, pay attention to some of the stuff we're doing. I think if you even just once in a while tune in to some of the stuff, you'll just see the development happening like real time. Because I was listening to the podcast that I did with you before, and I'm fundamentally different than the first one. So if you haven't seen that one, you can look at that one too and just kind of compare. But also just watch Mitch too. I mean, that's what really made me understand, like, whoa, there's something fundamentally.
Yeah. Yeah. This is the next level of self. Like Sam and I both done the whole spiritual route and the meditation and the business and the training and the development. This is the real deal. So
Mhm.
cool. All right. Thanks, Sam. See you later.
Yep. Peace.